Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to the Philly Sports Power Hour with Bill Colarulo on this Football Friday, the last Football Friday of the regular season. Crazy how quickly these seasons go by. Feels like the offseason is an eternity waiting to get back to NFL football. And this is the last week of the regular season. A little bit depressing. It really is. But now we get ready for the playoffs. Still some playoff scenarios that need to be figured out this weekend, so we'll jump into that. So I want to talk today. Obviously, we'll look at the games on Sunday. We'll look at the odds. We'll look at some of the playoff scenarios. We'll talk about this Eagles-Giants game. And I'm not going to give you a prediction today because we don't know if the Eagles starters are even going to play the whole game, but we'll talk about that, what I think the Eagles should do this weekend. I also want to just talk a little bit more about A.J. Brown very quickly, and I want to talk about Hassan Reddick's comments yesterday. Some interesting comments from Hassan Reddick with regard to the defensive coordinator change. So that was interesting. But this is the Philly Sports Power Hour. We are live on the JAKIB Sports Network on YouTube. We are also streaming live here on TikTok as well. What's up to the Power Hour crew on TikTok? But let's get a little roll call from my Power Hour crew on YouTube. I see Wine Niners Wine checking in nice and early. Jason A-Team in the house. Billy Ray. David Laprati Jr., Carlos Drew, Thunderbird. And I see some people on TikTok as well. Let's get a little roll call from our TikTok Power Hour crew. Provolone John. Haven't seen you before, but love the name. Provolone John. Kevin Savard checking in. So let's jump right in, guys. Before we get into our Football Friday, got to talk about my Fly guys. Because we've been talking about this Philadelphia Flyers team and that they are playing some really good hockey. They were on a nice stretch from mid-November. Things haven't been great over the last 7. They've now lost 6 of 7. We're back in action last night at home after a road trip against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And it looked like everything was going great. Before the game, Travis Konechny named an all-star. He's having a really good season for this Eagles team, plays really hard. Love him on the penalty kill with those shorthanded goals. But he puts in 2 goals last night. Flyers are up 2-0 in the third. And they blow a third-period lead. A 2-goal third-period lead. Unfortunately, lose in the shootout. And the person who scored the winner in the shootout was Johnny Gaudreau. Local kid, Johnny Gaudreau. And his father, Guy Gaudreau, actually was the one who taught me how to play hockey. When I was young, I used to play hockey over at Hollydale in Sewell. And that's where Johnny Gaudreau's father ran that rink. And he was tough, man. Guy Gaudreau was tough. I used to do a lot of power skating classes with him. And the worst thing was when Johnny Gaudreau's dad would get on the ice and he would say, "No pucks." You know how much fun an ice hockey practice is with no pucks? It means you're going to skate your asses off. Suicides. We used to do where we would pull them. You get your stick, another guy's stick, you put him under your arms, and then another player lays on the ice on his belly, holding on to the sticks, and you'd have to pull him up, and down the ice, up and down the ice. It is no surprise to me that Guy Gaudreau's son is in the NHL because Guy was a phenomenal instructor of hockey. But Guy Gaudreau's son, Johnny Gaudreau, scores the game winner in the shootout. Flyers drop their 6 of 7. And Tortorella tried some different things last night. He benches Cam Atkinson, who's been struggling this season, benches Morgan Frost. Again, they go with 7 defensemen and only 11 forwards. Didn't matter. They lose another one. But they're back in action on Saturday night. And this will be it for the hockey talk. I know not everyone's hockey fans, but as great as this Flyers team has played this season, they have really, really struggled on the power play. They have the worst power play in the NHL. They were 0 for 4 last night. They're 12 of 122 on the season. Less than 10%. Brutal. They got to get that power play going. But that's it for hockey talk, guys. I know. Not everyone are hockey fans, but when this Eagles season's over, we're going to do some more hockey talk. We will do some more hockey talk because it's going to be a long offseason if things go the way we all think they're going to go for this Philadelphia Eagles football team. But let's jump over to our Philadelphia Eagles because I want to talk a little bit about yesterday's show and A.J. Brown. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But yesterday on the show, I said that as much as I liked the things that A.J. Brown had to say yesterday, or the day before, we talked about it yesterday, I didn't think that his reasoning for not talking to the media sooner was a good reason from a captain. He said he didn't want to compound the negative. I said he should have spoke right away. We don't need a captain when things are going smoothly. We need a captain when things aren't going smoothly to help us get through adversity. And I had all types of people attacking me about that. Not only here on YouTube, but over on Instagram, because I posted a short little video about it, saying he doesn't owe you anything. He doesn't owe you anything as the media. Why does he have to talk to you? Well, this is what I said yesterday. As much as I do like A.J. Brown, and I don't think he is a problem in the locker room, and I liked what he had to say, the reason why he couldn't do what he did and just go radio silent when things were going bad is because look what happened. Right or wrong, the media, the fans, everyone started to create their own narrative about what the problem was with A.J. Brown. And then because of that, every other player had to answer for A.J. Brown. Every player was asked about it. Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith. They're asking Nick Sirianni. There's a reason why A.J. Brown apologized to his teammates before talking to the media 2 days ago. He apologized because that was the wrong move. As a captain on this football team, as a leader on this football team, you can't go radio silent when things go badly. And everyone who's attacking me saying he doesn't owe the media or fans anything. Well, by him not speaking, that's what happened. And there's a reason he apologized. Because in hindsight, A.J. Brown realizes you can't do that. Because narratives get formed, and now other people have to answer for what you're doing. So I like A.J. Brown, but that was my position on it. And of course, everybody in the comments, bad take, Bill, bad take. Well, if it was such a bad take, why did A.J. Brown apologize to his teammates then? Because it was the wrong way to handle it. And Brad Patterson in the chat, still talking about the Flyers for a second, and he is right. As bad as the power play has been, Philadelphia Flyers are unbelievable shorthanded. I talked a little bit about that with Travis Konechny. But they lead the league in shorthanded goals. They're actually more likely to score on the penalty kill than they are on the power play. But let's keep it with the Eagles now, because I want to talk about Hassan Reddick's comments yesterday. So Hassan Reddick was asked about, was it difficult for the defense having to switch defensive coordinators in the middle of the season. And Reddick said it is a hard thing to do. It's our job at the end of the day, so it's not a complaint. But yes, that was definitely a hard thing. You spend so much time with one defensive coordinator and learning a new defensive coordinator at the beginning of the year and trying to learn everything he wants us to do, his terminology, the way he calls things. And then towards the end of the season, we switch. But like I said, at the end of the day, it must get done. That's what the higher ups here felt was needed to get it done in order to make a change and get some things corrected. As players, we've got to go out there and do our best to perform. That was what he told Olivia Rainier of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And it's interesting because a lot of us talked about when the Philadelphia Eagles made that switch from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia, that it felt like a desperate move. At that point in the season, that late in the season, to change defensive coordinators. And to hear Hassan Reddick saying, yes, it has been difficult trying to switch coordinators, which we all expected it. But for me, and I've said this repeatedly on this show, for me, it's about the personnel on the defensive side of the football. So when you hear Reddick talking about how hard it has been to switch defensive coordinators in the middle of the season, and you already have a lack of personnel on the defensive side of the football, was it the right move to move on from Sean Desai? When you're already battling a lack of talent on the defensive side of the ball, and now you're switching coordinators really at the end of the season, not even in the middle of the season, at the end of the season, starting to look more and more like a panic move. And I see Billy Ray saying, panic move from a lack of leadership. So it'll be interesting to see, hey, maybe now with a few more games under their belt, does this defense start to get a little bit more comfortable with Matt Patricia as the signal caller on the defensive side of the ball? We will see. But if you follow me, you know my issue with that defense wasn't Sean Desai. It's not Matt Patricia. As much as I think Howie Roseman is a great general manager, I do. I think he's done a lot of good things. But if we're going to give Howie Roseman credit when he does good things, we need to call him out when he makes mistakes. Can't just be all praise. And Howie Roseman dropped the ball in building this defensive roster. And you've heard me talk about it. It's not just what happened this offseason. You have to look back now over the last 4 years and look at how many times Howie Roseman has missed on defensive players in the draft. That's why they're in the predicament they're in right now. And I've gone through the draft picks with you guys. But if we go back to 2019 and you look at all of the defensive players that have been taken in the last 4 years, and I'm not including the rookie class this season, I do have a lot of faith for these rookies. I have hope for these rookies. I think Sidney Brown's going to be a player. I think Keely Ringo's going to be a player. I think Jalen Carter is going to be a player. But a team with Super Bowl aspirations, you can't expect that many rookies to carry your defense to a Super Bowl. One rookie contributing to a defense, okay. But you can't expect that many rookies to carry a defense with Super Bowl aspirations. And then on top of it, not only those rookies, but trying to bring in these mercenaries, if you want to call them that, throughout the season was desperate. We talked about, was it a desperate move going from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia? Well, it was certainly a desperate move with all this personnel that they had to try to bring in throughout this season because the defense simply wasn't good enough. And it wasn't good enough because of the way Howie Roseman has drafted defensive players the last 4 seasons before this year. 2019, They took one defensive player. Defensive end, Sharif Miller. Not even in the NFL anymore. 2020, linebacker, Davion Taylor. Not on the Eagles. Safety, Kevon Wallace. Not on the Eagles. Linebacker, Sean Bradley. On IR, but was really just a special teams player. Defensive end, Casey Toohill on the Washington Commanders. Then you go to 2021. Milton Williams, nice pick at defensive tackle. Outside of that, you're not getting much from anybody. Zach McPherson on IR. Marlon Tupelotu, defensive tackle. Not a bad pick. He can take D tackles. That's one thing we know Howie Roseman can do. It's every other position. Defensive end, Teron Jackson on your practice squad. Safety linebacker, Jacoby Stevens. Not on the Eagles. Defensive end, Patrick Johnson. Didn't get any defensive snaps until about 2 weeks ago. He hasn't given you anything. You look at the 2022 draft. Jordan Davis, defensive tackle. Take him in the first round. Is he a first-round talent? I'm starting to have my doubts. Linebacker, Nakobe Dean, on IR. Defensive end, Kyron Johnson, on the Steelers. You're seeing a theme here, guys. You cannot expect to compete in this league if you don't have players who are still playing on their 4-year rookie contracts contributing to your team. The way the salary cap works, you can't pay a quarterback $200 million and a wide receiver $100 million if you don't have guys on their rookie deals contributing to your team. And that's why this defense, for me, is on Howie Roseman. And then what he tried to do after he ignored the linebacker and safety position. And this is why it was so frustrating to let guys like TJ Edwards and Marcus Epps walk out the door. Because you're not good enough at drafting to let young talent like that walk out of your building. You're not good enough at it. So although they didn't draft TJ Edwards and Marcus Epps, these were guys that they developed, young guys they developed into good players. Marcus Epps played 99% of the snaps for your Super Bowl team last year. TJ Edwards played 94% of the snaps on your Super Bowl defense last year. And you let them walk out the door and you tried to replace them with guys nobody else wanted. Bringing in Zach Cunningham, Miles Jack, Nick Morrow after the Chicago Bears said, sure, we'll upgrade to TJ Edwards. Safety. They tried bringing in guys nobody else wanted. Terrell Edmonds, who Mike Tomlin said, yeah, you started for us for 5 years, but see ya. Justin Evans, who's been hurt since he came into the league out of Texas A&M. Where's he now? On IR, as you should have expected. And then when it became clear that they were desperate at both those positions, they got to bring in Shaq Leonard, who the Colts didn't want. They had to bring in Kevin Byard, who's lost a step. This is on Howie Roseman. And I get it, you can't sign everybody. I know we wanted Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps and TJ Edwards. Some people wanted Kazir White. I was okay with that move. But the problem is, you can't afford to keep signing free agents and making trades. You have to hit in the draft. And even if this year's draft, these guys are going to be playmakers on this defense, you can't hit on defensive players once every 5 years and expect to have a defense that compete. You just can't. And that's why I put this defense on Howie Roseman. Now, maybe there could be some hope going forward. Does Darius Slay come back healthy? It looks like he could actually play this weekend, and we'll talk about whether or not he should. Avonte Maddox came back last week, obviously was rusty. But maybe he's going to get back to the form we saw before he got hurt. Zach Cunningham may be able to come back this week. He was a full participant in practice yesterday. So is there a chance that this defense maybe can do something? I'm not putting my money on it, But there's hope, I guess. But when I talk about Howie Roseman and him swinging and missing in the draft, the other issue is on that defensive end position. I see people in the chat talking about Derek Barnett. I think Derek Barnett stinks. I know he's doing okay in Houston right now. But the problem is, outside of Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, you have zero depth on the edge. A position we thought we had a lot of depth in, that edge rushing position, you don't have it. There's a reason why Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat are playing career highs in snaps, because there's nobody behind them that's giving you anything. Nolan Smith isn't giving you much. He's only a rookie. This is why you can't rely on that many rookies on your defense. You're talking about Keely Ringo, Eli Ricks, Sidney Brown, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. You can't rely on that many rookies. But you're getting nothing from the defensive ends that you've drafted. Kyron Johnson on the Steelers. Teron Jackson on your practice squad. Patrick Johnson giving you nothing. Casey Toohill on the Commanders. Sharif Miller out of the league. These are defensive ends you drafted. They haven't really drafted a defensive end that is contributing to this team since Josh Sweat in 2018. That's the problem that you're seeing right now along that defensive line. But we'll see what happens this weekend, guys. We'll get into the matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and New York Giants. But let's take a look around the NFL and some of these playoff scenarios that are still in play this weekend, because it should be a good weekend. There's going to be a lot of games that don't matter. You're going to see a lot of backup quarterbacks, unfortunately, but there are some games that still have a lot of meaning for the NFL playoffs. Let's start with the AFC. We'll look at the seeding there. Well, the Baltimore Ravens, they've clinched the 1 seed. They're getting a first-round bye. They're getting home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. And that Ravens team looks like they're unbeatable, in my opinion. I'm not sure there is a team in the AFC that's going to be able to go into Baltimore and beat that team and the style of football that they play. Love their defense. Love how physical they are. And when we talk about Howie Roseman ignoring the linebacker position, look at the linebackers you have on the Baltimore Ravens. Look at the safeties you have on the Baltimore Ravens. Love the style of football they play. And they just make a claim for, or not even a claim, he just gets cut. I don't think he went through waivers. I think they may have signed him as a free agent. I don't know the details of it, but they bring in Dalvin Cook to help that offense. We'll see if he does anything after getting cut by the Jets. But I like that Ravens team. That's my pick to get out of the AFC. We'll talk more next week about what we think is going to happen in the playoffs after all of this seeding gets arranged. But Ravens locked into the 1 seed. But the 2 seed in the AFC is still up for grabs. And this may be the game of the week. Sunday night, 8:20. You have the Buffalo Bills on the road in Miami going up against the Dolphins, and the winner of that game is the AFC East champion. A lot to play for in that football game. The interesting thing is the Buffalo Bills on the road are a 2.5-point favorite, and they're playing really good football. The Bills have won 5 of their last 6, and the only loss was the overtime loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that was a game where we look back now. Eagles really got lucky winning that football game. Buffalo Bills dominated on the offensive side of the football. Josh Allen ran, I think, for over 80 yards in that football game. But I like the Bills to beat the Dolphins. Can they bounce back? Because the Dolphins just got crushed by the Baltimore Ravens last week. But that may be the game of the week. Obviously, there's a reason the The NFL put it on Sunday night, 8:20. But the winner of that game will be your 2 seed. And then I believe the loser of that game would probably be the 6 seed, I would think. Let's look at these standings here. But I think that's probably the loser would go to the 6 seed. Because in the AFC, the Cleveland Browns are locked in at the 5 seed. So most likely, the 6 seed will be the loser of the Dolphins and Bills. And then you look at the 3 seed in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs are locked in. They're resting players. No Mahomes this weekend. You're going to get a lot of backup quarterbacks. And one of them may have a lot of people's interest when we go to the NFC. A lot of you probably know who I'm talking about already. But the Kansas City Chiefs locked in at the 3 seed. And then you have the AFC South still up for grabs. And you got a good game here. The Jacksonville Jaguars on the road at Tennessee. Tennessee has absolutely nothing to play for. In fact, the only thing Tennessee should be playing for is to lose this football game to get a better draft pick. But that's not Vrabel's way, man. Vrabel don't want to lose. So they're going to play that game hard. And the questionable is Trevor Lawrence. Does Trevor Lawrence play in that football game? He was limited again. But this Jacksonville Jaguars team, they need to win that game to win the AFC South. And they have not been playing well as of late. They've lost 4 out of 5, and their only win came against the Carolina Panthers. So can Dougie P will his team to victory to win the AFC South? If the Jags lose to the Titans, you then have the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts playing each other, where the winner would probably win the AFC South. C.J. Stroud, D'Amico Ryans doing a great job in Houston. And then we have Shane Steichen and Minshew Mania running wild in Indianapolis. So those are still things that are all up in the air. The Texans should make the playoffs if they win. They would leapfrog the Colts, all assuming the Jags win. So there's a lot going on in the AFC South to watch. And then, like I said, the Cleveland Browns are locked in at the 5 seed. So we'll see what happens. Pittsburgh Steelers still have a shot, but they need a lot of things to happen. Steelers need a lot of things to happen. They even have a small shot, even if they lose, if some things happen. But we'll see what plays out in the AFC. But when we get back from the break, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from the break, we'll flip over to what we really care about, which is the NFC, the different NFC scenarios. I also want to talk a little bit about Black Monday that's coming up, because we all know how many coaches usually get fired on the Monday following the last game of the regular season, and who I think could be on the hot seat come Black Monday. So stay tuned, guys. Hit that like button, hit that share button. We'll be right back.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their Fantasy Pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to the Philly Sports Power Hour on this Football Friday. Love the engagement in the chat. I see you guys during the break. I see Adam Exploits asking, no guest today. Usually don't have a guest on Friday on our Football Fridays. No guest. And we'll be back here on Monday, 10 o'clock, breaking down everything we saw on this NFL Sunday, last regular season. And then Monday night will be the Legal Hands to the Face show, like we do every Monday, 6:30 live on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram as well. And stay tuned. I think I got a pretty good guest for Monday night. A lot of people may be excited to hear from. So stay tuned. We'll announce that on Monday. But let's take a look around the NFC. We just went over the AFC playoff picture. Let's look at the NFC playoff picture. Really not many questions left. One of the main questions left for the NFC does affect the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's who wins the NFC South. But you look at the 1 seed, San Francisco 49ers, locked in, get the first round bye, home field throughout. Then you have the Dallas Cowboys right now sitting at the 2 seed. And we've talked about this before. If the Dallas Cowboys beat the Washington Commanders as 13-point favorites in Washington on a Commanders team that has absolutely nothing to play for, the Dallas Cowboys would be the NFC East champs. They would be the 2 seed. And that would drop the Philadelphia Eagles to the 5 seed. Now, there is a slim possibility that this Washington Commanders team says, we're going to play our asses off for Ron Rivera, because when we talk about Black Monday in a few minutes, Ron Rivera is probably getting the axe in Washington. So does this Commanders team come out to play hard for Ron Rivera, or do they just pack it up, roll over, and let the Cowboys beat them and win the NFC East? I don't think the Commanders win that game, but there is a slim possibility that they play hard for Ron Rivera. But assuming the Cowboys win, they're your 2 seed. The Detroit Lions would be your 3 seed. The Eagles would be the 5. The Rams most likely would be locked in at the 6. And the Green Bay Packers would win and be your 7th seed. So then the question becomes, well, who is the 4 seed? Who would the Philadelphia Eagles have to play if they do, in fact, open up as a 5 seed? Well, they would be on the road against the winner of the NFC South. And if the Tampa Bay Bucks beat the Carolina Panthers in Carolina, the Tampa Bay Bucks are the NFC South champions. At 9-8, And this is something that gets debated all of the time. So the Philadelphia Eagles, at worst case scenario, could finish at 11-6. If they win on Sunday, they'll be 12-5. And they would have to go on the road to play a team that finishes 9-8. And if you're here in the chat, what are your thoughts about that? Because that gets debated a lot. Should a division winner automatically host a playoff game? Should a division winner automatically make the playoffs? Or do we think it should be just based on record? Now, here's my thoughts on it. I think if you win the division, you should absolutely make the playoffs. I don't think there should be any debate. I know we've had teams win the division with a losing record and still make the playoffs. I'm okay with that. I think if you win a division, you should make the playoffs. The thing where I question is, should you host the playoff game? Should an 8-9 team or a 9-8 team host a 12-5 team? I'm not sure how I feel about that, because it is tough to win the division. You're seeing here in the NFC East, there hasn't been a repeat champion in almost 20 years. So what do you guys think? I see Jim West VT on YouTube saying the division winner in the playoffs, but the best team hosts. I see Ralph on TikTok saying just don't lose in your division. It's that simple. Wine Niners Wine, the division wins are important. They should absolutely host. Billy Ray, maybe give the top 3 division winners home games and the 4 through 7 seeded by record. Bobby Murphy, I think a division winner should get a home game, but then reseed and go by record after the wild card round. Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I do think division winners should make the playoffs. I don't think there should be any debate there. It's just who should host the playoff game. But the NFC South winner will finish at best 9-8 and host the 5 seed, which is probably going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Unless the Commanders can come out and absolutely shock the world playing for Ron Rivera, Eagles will be the 5 seed. And if the Bucs beat the Carolina Panthers, the Eagles would open up the playoffs in Tampa Bay on Wild Card Weekend. Now, here's the thing that surprises me. You look at that game, Bucs at Carolina, I would say it's a no-brainer the Bucs win that game. But the line scares me a little bit. Why are the Bucs only a 4.5-point favorite in Carolina? I still think the Bucs win that game, but that line scares me just a little bit. What do you guys think if you're here in the chat? Do you think the Bucs take care of business and beat the Panthers? And then if that happens, Eagles open up in Tampa. Now, the other scenario is if somehow the Carolina Panthers upset the Tampa Bay Bucs, the Eagles would most likely open on the road against the winner of the Falcons and Saints game, because those two teams play each other this weekend. And I'm of the belief I would rather go to Tampa. I don't want to have to go to New Orleans. I don't want to have to go to Atlanta. Not that I think either one of those teams is that great. I just would rather play the Bucs in Tampa than have to go into New Orleans or into Atlanta. And the thing that scares me the most about the Atlanta Falcons, wouldn't it be poetic justice if Bijan Robinson has a huge game against the Philadelphia Eagles? If you guys remember, all offseason leading up to the draft, the debate was, do the Eagles take Bijan or not? Would they take a running back that high? And there was this whole debate. Never even had to be a debate because the Falcons take him early. But that would scare me. It would be complete poetic justice if Bijan runs wild on the Philadelphia Eagles. But here's what's probably going to be the NFC seeding. You'll have the 49ers at 1, Cowboys at 2, Lions at 3, Bucks at 4, Eagles at 5, Rams at 6, and the Green Bay Packers at 7. That's how I see it playing out. And as I mentioned the Rams, we talked about how there's going to be a lot of backup quarterbacks playing this weekend because the games don't all matter. How about those Los Angeles Rams? The starter for the Los Angeles Rams this weekend, none other than Carson Wentz. I know a lot of us will be tuned in to see how Wentz plays in that football game, but Carson Wentz starting an NFL game for the first time in a long time. Curious to see how Wentz does in that game. But before the break, I talked a little bit about Black Monday. And a lot of you guys know Black Monday is always the Monday after the last regular season NFL game where a lot of NFL teams move on from coaches. Some of them are expected. Some of them surprise you. So I went through and took a look at the list, and these are the guys I could see getting the axe come Black Monday. The biggest name on the list for me, Bill Belichick in New England. Now, I've been saying this for a few weeks now. I don't think it will be reported that Bill Belichick gets fired by the New England Patriots. I think you will see the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick decide to go their separate ways. Bill Belichick will go out on his terms. He will be the one who decided to leave. That's the way I think it'll be reported. But I think you may see the last of Bill Belichick in New England this weekend. Talk about the end of an absolute historic run. Whether you like Bill Belichick or not, it'll be really, really almost unbelievable to see another coach on the sidelines of the New England Patriots. It really will. But the end of an era, I think, in New England this weekend. You guys agree with me? If you're here in the chat, do you think Bill Belichick is gone come Black Monday? And I see real quick, there's a question in the chat that I see what Baldy had to say about this D-line. Said he's not even sure that Jordan Davis should be dressing right now. I did see that. I know he said that Jordan Davis is probably getting fined every single week for being out of shape. The problem is you don't dress Jordan Davis. You don't really have that much depth. I mean, the one spot they have on the D-line that does have depth is D-tackle. But you saw Jalen Carter's hitting a wall. Milton Williams is hitting a wall. Fletcher Cox is over 35 years old, playing more snaps than these guys. I just don't see how you could afford to sit Jordan Davis. I just don't think you have enough depth. And as we talk about Bill Belichick, I see Jim West VT say, does Bill go to the Chargers or the Panthers? I don't see a chance in hell that Bill Belichick would want to coach for Dave Tepper, who appears to be the worst owner in the NFL, who appears to just be a bad man. You hear the things he says. You Google him and hear some stories about things that he's done or said in the past. I don't think anybody would want to coach for Dave Tepper. But you look at the Los Angeles Chargers, that was a team I've been saying for a while now that I thought would be a good spot for Belichick. So we'll see. We'll see if Belichick moves on from New England. Staying in the AFC, it'll be interesting to see if the Las Vegas Raiders put their faith in Antonio Pierce going forward. I'd like to see them do it. I think Antonio Pierce has done a great job there. And I'm hoping the Las Vegas Raiders give him a shot because they made the mistake a couple years ago, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the special teams coach, I think it was, that they named the interim head coach who did a great job. They don't give him the job, although the players wanted him to get it. And they turned to Josh McDaniel, and that was a disaster. So maybe they've learned their lesson. And they keep it with the Antonio Pierce, who's been having those guys play hard, man. He really is. I like everything I've seen from Antonio Pierce. Hopefully the Raiders stick with him. And I see on TikTok Contrarian saying they won't stay with Pierce. A new broom always sweeps clean. But they did that before Contrarian, and it didn't work out for him. So I'm hoping. I like Antonio Pierce. I love the way he coaches with emotion. I think he deserves it. So I'm hoping. But I see Jim West on YouTube saying that maybe Jim Harbaugh goes to the Raiders. A lot of chatter about Jim Harbaugh coming back to the NFL. A lot of chatter, and he hasn't done anything to quiet those rumors. But staying with the AFC, you got Antonio Pierce. The Los Angeles Chargers we talked about, they've already moved on from Brandon Staley. What do? Outside of that, I don't see any AFC teams moving on from their coaches. If you guys disagree, let me know. What other AFC teams do you think come Black Monday gets the axe? I think there's a few in the NFC for sure. So we already talked about the Washington Commanders, how I think this is Ron Rivera's last game coaching. I think come Monday, you'll definitely get the announcement that Ron Rivera is gone in Washington. Do they also get rid of Eric Bieniemy, or do they make him their head coach? Not sure. Could Bill Belichick end up in Washington? Seems a lot like something Josh Harris would do. So we'll see what happens there. And I see Billy Ray in the chat when we were talking about the AFC coaches saying, what about Tomlin? I can't imagine them moving on from Mike Tomlin. Even if they lose, it'll now be another season where he doesn't have a losing record. He's never had a losing record. And we know the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, they keep coaches forever. Forever. Before Tomlin, it was Cowher. Before Cowher, it was Chuck Noll. So I don't think Tomlin gets fired. So I think Rivera's gone. I would have thought there was a chance that Eberflus in Chicago would have been gone, but they've already announced they're going to stick with him. The Carolina Panthers obviously need a coach after cleaning house with Frank Reich. But there's two other ones that I could see maybe moving on from their coaches depending on how this weekend goes. And if the Bucs win, we know they go to the playoffs as your NFC South champs. And if that happens, both the Saints and the Falcons miss out on the playoffs. And you have the Saints. Dennis Allen is 23-46 in his career. He's a guy I could see come Black Monday that the New Orleans Saints move on from. And then you go to the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith. He has not impressed me in 3 years. Is he a guy that maybe Arthur Blank decides to move on from? So those are guys to look out for. Arthur Smith and Dennis Allen come Black Monday that I could see getting fired. So it looks like, for me, we already know the Chargers need a coach. The Carolina Panthers need a coach. The Las Vegas Raiders need a coach because he's only an interim. I think New England moves on from Belichick. I think Washington moves on from Ron Rivera. And I could see Atlanta and New Orleans moving on from their coaches. That would be 7 head coaching vacancies come Black Monday. And I see some people talking about, could Dallas, Mike McCarthy, be on the hot seat? I don't think so. You know, this was the first year that he was the play caller in Dallas, and look at the numbers that this offense has put up. And I see some people in the chat, and it still surprises me. I see Mr. Rudy Poo saying that if Nick loses to the Bucs, that he's gone. And I've done videos on this. I had people yelling at me that how could you even do a video about Sirianni being on the hot seat? And it's because people are saying he should be on the hot seat. I completely disagree. I don't care what happens the rest of the way. I don't care if they get blown out by the Giants and blown out by the Bucs. I'm still not putting Nick Sirianni on the hot seat. I think that would be an overreaction. I'm not saying he's done a great job this season. But you can't take a guy who's the only head coach in Philadelphia Eagles history to make the playoffs in his first 3 seasons and say, we're going to move on. Coming off a Super Bowl loss. And I've gone over this stuff with you guys before. Only 6 coaches in NFL history have lost the Super Bowl and gotten back the next year. And you're talking about legends. Tom Landry, Don Shula, Bud Grant, Marv Levy, Dan Reeves, Bill Belichick. I don't see how you can judge him by that standard and say, because you're not one of those legends that was able to get your team back to a Super Bowl with the defensive personnel that Howie Roseman has given you, that you move on from Nick Sirianni. I just think it would be an overreaction. And I see you guys in the chat disagreeing with me, and that's fine. But I think it would be an overreaction. I'd be fine with moving on from the offensive coordinator. I'd be fine with moving on from the defensive coordinator. But I think when you look at Sirianni and what he's done in 3 seasons, he's earned at least another year. So I think there'll be 7 vacancies come Monday. But let's talk about this Eagles game as we start to wrap up the Philly Sports Power Hour on this Friday. And guys, I do really appreciate you all spending this hour with me. I say it to you a lot, but I really do. Love having you guys here. Best hour of my day. Hopefully it's the best hour of your day too. But let's talk about this Eagles game. The first question we got to ask is, should they play their starters? And I see a lot of people saying that they should rest the starters this week. And I could not disagree more with resting the starters for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is not decided that you've lost the NFC East. As unlikely as it may be that the Commanders beat the Cowboys, you can't assume that the Cowboys are going to win that football game. So could you imagine the disaster it would be if Sirianni said, we're going to rest our starters, they go against the Giants with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, and they lose the football game, and you look up at the scoreboard, and the Commanders beat the Cowboys, and you just given up an opportunity to be the 2 seed. You can't do it. That's number one. But for me, even more important than the fact that you're still technically fighting for an NFC East championship is the fact that this team needs to play. They need to somehow get their mojo right heading into the playoffs. They haven't played well in the last few weeks. You heard Hassan Reddick talking about how tough it's been changing defensive coordinators. Well, the only way that you can try to fix these things is by playing. So for me, I am playing my starters on Sunday. They have things they need to fix, and you fix them by playing. Now listen, would I play guys who are questionable? No. I don't need to see Devontae Smith. He's battling that ankle injury. I'm okay resting Devontae Smith. Darius Slay may be coming back from that knee injury. Well, I know the turf at MetLife Stadium is a mess. But I'd be okay with them playing Darius Slay a little bit. Let's get him back into some games here. Because we all know game speed is a little bit different than practice. So I don't necessarily need to see Darius Slay play the entire game, but I'd like to see him play a little if he's healthy enough to. So as long as these guys are healthy, I'm playing them. And the only way I would consider them not playing the entire 60-minute game would be if they look great in the first half. That if their offense is firing on all cylinders, their defense is shutting down Tyrod Taylor and the Giants, who I want to talk about in a second, and you look up at the scoreboard and the Cowboys are dominating the Commanders. If that's the case, I'd be okay with them saying, okay, we're not going to play the second half. Now, I don't think we're going to see them dominate the first half, but if the team did somehow look great in the first half and the Cowboys are dominating the Commanders, maybe at that point I would consider pulling my guys. But that's the only time I would do that. But we got to get this mojo right. And one of the things I have concerns about is this defense, because the Philadelphia Eagles aren't going up against Tommy Cutlets. I wish they were, because Tommy Cutlets absolutely stinks, as you saw a couple of weeks ago in Week 16. In the first half, the Eagles were up. What was the score in the first half of that game? I think 20-3. Yeah, 20-3. The Eagles were up in that first game against the Giants. They held Tommy Cutlets and the New York Giants offense to 1 of 8 on third down. So this Eagles defense, who struggled all year on third down, was doing a great job in the first half against Tommy DeVito, a JV quarterback. But then you saw what happened when Tyrod Taylor came into the game. Tyrod Taylor's a good veteran quarterback. He went 3 of 6 on third down. Now, I know a lot of what happened in the second half of that Giants game was because of turnovers. They fumble the kickoff to start the second half. Dallas Goedert falls down on an out route, pick 6 the other way. But Tyrod Taylor does concern me. He's getting the start for the second straight week, and you look at what he did last week against the Los Angeles Rams. Tyrod Taylor put up 360 yards last week. He had 40 on the ground, threw for 319 in the air. I'm a little concerned about this game because we can't afford, if we do in fact play our starters like I think they should, you have to have a strong performance from your defense against Tyrod Taylor and this Giants offense. They're the 30th ranked offense in the NFL. 32nd passing offense. 30th in points per game. Now they're 16th in rushing yards per game. And that's something this Eagles defense was so good the first 9 games and has been really bad the last 7. That's what I need to see. I need to see this defense come out, shut down the run, shut down the pass. And if they only play a half, that's fine, but they better dominate that half of football. And on the offensive side of the ball, it's not rocket science what I want to see. No turnovers. The one thing that this Giants team has done well this year, they are a +9 turnover differential. The Philadelphia Eagles are a -7. So they need to protect the football. Like to see them get that running game established because we're going to need it come the playoffs. The only way this team does anything in the playoffs is if they establish that running game, win the time of possession battle, and keep this defense on the sidelines against these better teams. But I'm not going to give you a prediction because I don't even know if this team is playing the full 4 quarters. But I'm going to tell you what I want to see, and what I want to see is an offense that doesn't turn the ball over, that looks like they have some sort of rhythm, that starts to find the identity we've been asking for 17 weeks, which is running the football and then throwing it off of the run. And I want to see this defense shut down the Giants' running game, get some pressure on Tyrod Taylor, and put together, if they play a half, put together a half of football. They play 4 quarters. I want to see them play well for 4 quarters. We can't afford to only play half a game or 1 quarter. So that's what I want to see this weekend. So I'll be back here Monday, 10 o'clock. We'll break it all down. And then obviously Monday night on the Legal Hands to the Face show, we'll break it all down. And at that point, we'll know who the Eagles' playoff opponent is. We'll know how both conferences look for playoff seeding. So we'll talk about that, and we'll probably start to learn what coaches got the axe as well. But before we go, guys, like we end every single show with a little Today in Sports history. And this one is a sad one that hits close to home. January 5th, 2004. We're now going on 20 years. We lost the great Tug McGraw. Tug McGraw died January 5th, 2004. We all have fond memories. I wasn't born, but I've seen the replay over and over and over again. The 1980 Philadelphia Phillies World Series championship with Tug McGraw striking out the last strikeout of the game to win the World Series. So unfortunately today, 20 years ago, was when we lost Tug McGraw. But guys, that's the Philly Sports Power Hour. I appreciate all of you. Hit that like button for me. Hit that share button for me. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, Twitter. If you're here on TikTok, make sure you're following there as well. We're posting daily content. So everybody have a great, great weekend. Enjoy the last regular season game of the NFL season. And be sure to check out all the game day shows right here on the JAKIB Sports Network. We'll be on the pregame, the halftime, the postgame. Obviously, you get me, Mark Farzetta, the one and only Seth Joyner, Mikey Miss, Kayla Santiago, John McMullen. Great cast. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great weekend. And as always, go Birds.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.